Yeah? Okay. I'm so... What happened? Yeah? Oh, the camera woman is giving me signals, so I don't know if the live is going or not. We've been having some technical issues, so I appreciate your patience. Just to introduce myself, my name is Rebeca Stevenson. I'm a registered dietitian and chef. I graduated from the North Miami campus in 2013. Seems like forever ago at this point. But I'm very excited. Today we're going to make a traditional Mexican recipe near a town where I grew up in Mexico. It's a chicken Tinga Tostadas. And the basis of this dish is cooked chicken, that it could either be rotisserie chicken or a cooked chicken in a broth, which I made. And my niece did a wonderful job at cutting it into little pieces. She might come along and introduce herself at some point. But the idea is also to get your kids involved in the kitchen. This is a great thing that my niece is 5, or at any age, they can help out in the kitchen as well. And for the base of the chicken tinga, so of course we have our chicken, we're gonna use tomatoes and a traditional Mexican chili, which is chipotle chili. You'll typically find it in the grocery store in a sauce like this. And it's actually jalapeno peppers that have been roasted or dried, and that adds a smoky taste to dishes. So they just let this obviously turn red, and then they preserve it. So that what gives this dish a very particular flavor. Now all of this chicken and the lovely tomato sauce is going to go on top of a tostada. And a tostada is basically a corn tortilla that has been deep fried or baked. Today we're actually going to bake it. Again, we're trying to be a little health conscious, calorie conscious, so I'll show you how to bake tortillas to make your own tostadas. So the chicken and other toppings are gonna go on top of our tostada and have this delicious, crunchy, traditional Mexican dish. All right, so if you're making this at home, you do wanna have your chicken already cooked, whether that's rotisserie chicken or regular chicken. The next step is that we're actually going to get some onions going in a pan. So I have a hot pan already on the stove. And I'm going to go ahead and get those onions on and browning, and I have everything else out here that's going to be a topping for our tostadas. So just to show you real quick, this is going to, again, with the chicken, be the basis of the dish. It can be a white onion, yellow onions. This dish is very flexible. It's made in Mexico. Traditionally, if you have a large group of people coming over, this is a dish that will feed a lot of people. So if you have a big family or like cooking in bulk, this is definitely a dish to have on hand. So again, I'm taking my time with this onion. I want to get very thin slivers. And the idea is that this will go along with our chicken and provide a nice topping for our tostadas. I'm a little nervous, guys, after trying to log into live, so don't judge my knife skills just yet, right? Okay, so we have our onion cooked, and I actually like saving the tops, and I'm gonna use that for our sauce that we're gonna make in our blender a little bit later. So I have a big white onion here that I'm gonna cut all the way down, and I'm also going to add salt and pepper to our onions, and we're gonna get those browning in our pan over here. Again, I appreciate everyone's patience as you were trying to log on. As we know with social media, things are a little bit tricky, but hopefully you'll be able to follow along and do this recipe at home. So again, I'm saving part of the onion to mix in with the sauce, and I'm gonna get my onions browning, so we're gonna head over to our stove. Walk with me. Let's go. So again, I already have a hot pan, and I have some oil here. Again, if you are looking for healthy alternatives to oil, you can cook with different things. Avocado oil, olive oil, any plant-based oils are great, especially if you're looking for heart-healthy fats. And I'm just going to go ahead and add my onions in. The pan was already hot. Breaking them up a little. Again, we're going to get some even browning on this. And we're just going to let them hang out. Get them a little translucent with a little bit of browning before we work on our sauce and bring that in. Let's increase the temperature of this puppy. All right, and also what I want to show you is over here I have the broth that I'm going to use actually for a salsa in a little bit, and that's where I cook the chicken. So I basically just put in some leftover carrots, pepper, onion, boil that down with the chicken, and I have a nice quick broth that I can use for the sauce and even during the week for either cooking rice or cooking lentils or making a soup. Having your own vegetable or chicken broth on hand is pretty handy for a lot of things. And even I always get questions, you know, if you make a large thing of broth, what do you do with it and how do you store it? You can just keep it in your refrigerator, or you can even freeze it and use it along the way for different sauces. It definitely adds a lot of flavor instead of, let's say, adding a lot of salt or adding a lot of fat to things. Having a nice chicken or vegetable broth to add seasoning and taste to dishes is a calorie conscious way or a healthy way to get some flavor into your dishes. All right, now that we got the onions going, we have our chicken already cut up by my niece, we're gonna work on our sauce. So the basis of our sauce is that we have our onion bottoms. I'm gonna put those in. And if you yourself are Mexican, right, please keep in mind that this recipe, every Mexican grandma, every Mexican mom has their own way of making this dish. So, you know, you might go to a restaurant, have it one way, you might go to someone's house, have it a different way. That's the beauty of this dish. So some people cook their tomatoes, some people add them raw, some might make it spicier than others. But today we're gonna use the tomatoes, the garlic, the chipotle, onions, and I actually have some oregano that I'm gonna add in as the chicken is cooking. But if you had dried oregano, we'd go ahead and add that to the sauce. All right, good. So tomatoes, we're just gonna rough chop them because I'm basically adding them to the blender. So there really isn't much to them. I do wanna take a little bit of that bottom out. Ideally, you want to have tomatoes that are obviously ripe. That sweetness of the tomato will definitely come through in the sauce. And tomatoes are a huge staple in Mexican cuisine. And a lot of people debate if they're a fruit or a vegetable. You can sort that out in the comments. If you think it's a fruit or a vegetable, go ahead and comment that in. Tomatoes are a fruit or vegetable. So I'm gonna pick the ripest ones. I probably am gonna use like 5 or 6. Just depends on how much chicken you're making, honestly, how many tomatoes you're gonna use, and that's what we're gonna add in. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit of garlic as well. Ooh, cutting board. I'm only gonna add probably 1 clove of garlic, and I'm not gonna cut it, it's definitely going in the blender, just mashing that up. And then going into our chipotle. So if you're someone that doesn't like spicy food, definitely only add the adobo or sauce that's on top. But if you're someone that really likes spicy food, sometimes there's chili peppers in it, so you can go ahead and add the whole chili pepper in. It's important to keep in mind that chili peppers tend to be spicier if they have the seeds or veins. So if that's something you don't like, then don't add it to the sauce. My family and I really enjoy spicy food, so I'm adding like a good, you know, half a can to 1/4 of a can here. But again, this is just based on your family's preference of spicy dishes. And even if you didn't want to add that much spicy pepper, you can always just use a bell pepper as well, add that in. And I'm actually gonna add the one that I cooked with the chicken broth, that way it's a little softer. And again, we're using a lot of red in this dish. So if you didn't know, a lot of red equals vitamin A, lycopene, and vitamin C. Usually think of citrus fruit like oranges and lemons have vitamin C, but peppers actually do have a lot. So this dish is not only delicious, but it's packed with nutrients. So if you're cooking for your family, you want to make sure that you get enough fruits and vegetables, and a sauce is a great way to do that. Especially if you have picky eaters at home that don't typically eat vegetables. Try throwing them in a delicious sauce and they won't know they're in there. All right, so we're gonna head over to the connection where I'll put in the blender and add the chicken broth. So let's head over there. And you can kind of see my onions are hanging out, and I'm actually gonna salt them. We're gonna add salt and pepper to these. And again, I'm looking just for them to get translucent and a little bit brown. Ooh, we lost one. Put it back in there. All right. So, like I mentioned, I have my chicken broth that I made with the chicken, and I have a pepper in there that I'm actually going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to our blender. And even if you add too much broth, you can even use water, and I left this out. These chicken bouillons and water will definitely add a little bit of taste. Again, if you're someone that's watching your sodium, try to pick the low sodium bouillon packets. I know a lot of chefs will hate me for that. But remember, we're thinking of calorie conscious or healthy ways to add flavor to dishes, and reducing sodium if you especially have a condition that you need to watch your sodium, that's a great alternative. Or make your own broth, because you can actually see how much sodium goes into the broth. All right, so I have my chipotles, my broth, my tomatoes, and I didn't add salt to my chicken broth. And the reason is that I want to salt it now, and then I'm obviously going to salt as I go. And we're going to taste as we go. That's also an important part of cooking. And like I mentioned, if you have dry oregano, you can add that in, but I'm going to add it as the chicken is stewing. All right, so I'm going to add this buddy to blend. It's going to get a little loud in here. Quite liquidy, and that's what I want because it's going to eventually cook down. It has a good taste. I will honestly add a little bit more chipotle because, again, we like things spicy, but it's good that you taste along. That way you can see if it's something that is spicy before you add everything else. So yes, so now that our onions are, as you can see, a little bit brown and translucent, I'm going to go ahead and add our sauce to cook down. And I'm going to leave this to the side. And I actually left my lovely Instapot crock pot out because if you're at home and you don't have any time necessarily to be looking at a stove, this recipe does really well in a crock pot. So you were just to make your sauce, you could put the raw chicken in your crock pot and you have dinner in 2 or 3 hours by just letting it hang out in the crock pot. So if being by a stove is something that you can't realistically do at home, definitely invest in a crock pot or Instapot and add all these ingredients in there and you're good to go. No need to stress about being over a stove. So we're just gonna let this hang out kind of at medium heat, wait for it to boil, to come down a little bit. And I'm actually gonna get my chicken, add it in and add that fresh oregano. So we'll walk over here with my lovely camera women. Oh gosh, you can tell English is not my first language, but that's cool. All right, so a note on oregano, as you probably saw in the ingredient list, I specified Mexican oregano. We are making a Mexican recipe, and there are 2 different kinds of oregano. If you go to like a plant store, you'll see the 2 different types. You'll be able to smell it, the size of the leaves, even how they taste is a little bit different. So if you can, if that's an option for you at the grocery store or having it in your garden, definitely get the Mexican oregano. So I'm going to put our chicken, I'm just going to check because my 5-year-old niece is this and there might be like a big chunk, but it looks like we're good. So I'm going to go ahead, add our chicken and our oregano over to our sauce. You guys can come with me. Yes, let's do that. All right, so I added our oregano. As you can see, it's already boiling. I'm gonna add our chicken. Yeah, looks good. So make sure everything's coated. And it's meant to be a brothy in that sense of it's gonna have some liquid in it. But the idea is that the chicken will absorb it and it'll cook down as we let it hang out. And I even have another piece of chicken that I could throw in there. All right, so we're looking good. We're gonna let this hang out. The next thing that we're going to do, and I'm gonna have my camera woman walk on this side and we're gonna switch. All right, good. I wanna talk about tortillas. So if you live in the US and you don't live next to a Hispanic or Mexican community, you might only have access to these kinds of tortillas that are typically used in like wraps or burritos, and they tend to be very large and a lot of stuff is thrown in and it's wrapped. That's not what we're using today. And there's a big variety of like spinach and all this flavors. That's not what we're using. Again, we're trying to keep this traditional. So I went to a local grocery store and they have these yellow corn tortillas, and we're actually going to bake them and make our own tostadas. So I have the oven at 400. It could be 375 if you're afraid of burning things. So you can use a brush, or I have this spray oil. I'm going to spray both sides. You can even add salt if you're that person that likes a lot of flavor, or even like cumin or garlic. Just add an extra, I don't know, flavorful something to it. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the oven. It's already preheated. And we're going to let them hang out. I'll probably flip them halfway through, so I'll leave them in 5 minutes, flip them, do another 5 minutes. If you don't feel comfortable making them in the oven, you can always find them at the grocery store. These are, same thing, tortillas that have been typically deep fried. Sometimes, depends on your grocery store. If you live next to a Hispanic or Mexican grocery store, you'll find these. So as you can see, the tortilla, our typical corn tortilla, is softer, and then this is like a crispy shell. All right, and I will show you what the plating looks like using both. But just so you guys can get an idea of the different kinds of tortillas out there. And definitely we want to find something, again, corn might have a little bit more fiber and nutrients compared to like a flour tortilla. And some flour tortillas obviously have additives to them, so whether that's protein or they're enriched with other vitamins. So choose whatever works for your family. But for this traditional recipe, we're going with the yellow corn. And that's what would typically be used in Mexico. So it's up to you to decide how traditional you want to go and what works for your family. Okay, so I'm going to check on the chicken real quick. As you can see, it's already boiling down, getting that sauce. Yeah, good camera skills. Looking at the zoomed in there. Good. I'm going to let this hang out, and we're going to go work on the toppings for our tostadas. Because like I mentioned in the beginning, we're going to have our base, which is a tostada, and we're going to add things on top. So, if you want, in Mexico, they do add beans, like refried beans to the tostadas. Again, looking for a low sodium product in a can would be a good idea if that's the route you want to go. But on top, we're also going to add either avocado, and I have lettuce. This is an iceberg lettuce. I typically like this because it's very crispy. Crispy or crisp. So as you bite into the tostada, you have that crunchiness of the corn. You have the rich tomato sauce, and then on top you have a fresh lettuce to bite into. And then we're also going to have some avocado, so that adds another creamy layer to your tostada. Traditionally, we also have a sour cream. I'm just going to throw these out. Okay. Traditionally, we also have a sour cream. So I bought both kinds. I currently live in South Florida, and we have Publix. So you have our Publix brand, and then we have our Olay Mexican Foods brand. Typically, you'll see the texture in, I actually want to show you guys, since we're here and waiting for things to cook. Let me show you. So Mexican crema, if you've never seen it before, it's definitely like a different texture. So it's a little bit softer, I would say, compared to your American sour cream. I have it on my finger. You have to taste it, of course. I will say it's a lot sweeter as well. So your American sour cream does have a creamy texture, but it's definitely a lot more sour. So we have these two options. Or if you're looking for something that, again, is low in fat, a little higher in protein, you can even use a Greek yogurt. A plain Greek yogurt definitely could be a great replacement in Mexican dishes or even other dishes instead of sour cream or a cream-based sauce. You can even do half and half. So if you had a regular sour cream and a regular plain Greek yogurt, you could always mix them and add them as a topping. Again, these are just small tips if you wanted to create a healthier, calorie-conscious dish. All right, so these are our toppings. We're kind of gonna get them together. Ooh, I forgot the most exciting part, which is cheese. You can't have a good dish without cheese. And I will say traditional Mexican cheese is white. Rarely in Mexico you will find a yellow cheese added to a dish. It's just not something that's done. That's a very Tex-Mex version of Mexican food, where yellow cheese is added, melted on top of dishes. Typical in Mexico, we have a fresh cheese that would be closely related to a farmer's cheese, or even like a part skim mozzarella, where it's not fermented, it's very light, it's not aged. And I'm actually gonna break this up and have it in a small bowl, so that way as we're getting ready to put our tostadas together, we have some of this cheese going. And I particularly like this cheese because it also has a nice level of like saltiness or brininess. So remember, we're thinking of layering. So a lot of Mexican cuisine is about layering something with a good sauce, something that has a crisp, fresh flavor to it. So that's what tostadas are. And typically when you're in Mexico and you're having people over, you would have all the toppings out on the table, and everyone just makes their own tostada. And that's why this is great for large crowds, or if you have a large family, you just have everything out on the table and everyone can just make their own. And that's always super fun. All right, so iceberg lettuce, I'm gonna go ahead and cut it. Just gonna wipe down my knife here. We don't want it tasting like garlic or onion. And I'm going to cut it on this side of the cutting board. So again, I'm just looking for very small slivers. Since it's going to be on top of our tostada, it's just going to be like a nice, literally like layering on top. Actually, while I get a little break here, I'm going to go over to look at our tostadas. Ooh, it looks good, my friends. We're going to flip them. Don't do this at home. But I swear, you'll always see like someone's grandmother do it with their hands. Don't do this at home. Don't do it if you have kids. Grab like something to flip it. So I'm gonna flip them and see how it's getting nice and crispy. And it's very similar to if you were to deep fry it, but we're getting a nice crispness without the deep frying. All right. If someone has a timer out there, we're only gonna leave them in for 1 more minute. We don't want them to burn. Okay. Checking on our chicken, it's looking good. As you can see, it's definitely reduced, like our broth, tomato mixture has definitely come down. And for those of you that were patient enough and hang out until we went live, I'm gonna tell you one of the secret ingredients that a lot of grandmothers put in their chicken tinga, and that is cinnamon. You'd be surprised, why is there cinnamon in Mexican food? But that is a secret ingredient that a lot of Mexican grandmothers would add to their tinga. So if you wanted to add that special taste maybe to this, you can go ahead and add a cinnamon stick, let it hang out there, or just a dash of cinnamon. So this is actually looking pretty good. Like I said, traditionally you do want to see some of that broth. It's not meant to be a dry mixture. You really want it to be moist as you bite into the chicken. All right, so I'm gonna lower the heat on this. We're gonna wait for our tostadas to come out. I'm gonna finish chopping some lettuce. At this point, if you have any questions about either myself as a registered dietitian or as a chef about the recipe, I'd be happy to answer them. We're just kind of hanging out, waiting for things to come together. Oh, do we have a question?
We do have a question.
Yes!
From Javi Gita. How has Johnson & Wales education helped you as a dietitian?
Oh my gosh, it's helped a lot. I think a lot of dietitians don't necessarily feel comfortable in the kitchen. And that's not to say everyone, but I think having an education with Johnson & Wales definitely helped me, number one, feel more comfortable as a dietitian giving advice. And number two, help my clients. You know, I'm a virtual nutrition coach, and a lot of my counseling goes into finding individualized plans or what works for clients. And a lot of it that has to do with cooking. No one wants to eat boring food. No one wants to eat bland tasting food. So my education at Johnson & Wales definitely helped me learn how to create flavorful dishes that are health conscious and translate that to my clients when I create individualized plans for them. So yes, hopefully that answers your question. And I definitely do see a difference in comfort level with talking about food and being in the kitchen compared to my dietitians that maybe don't feel so comfortable in the kitchen. But I think we all have our strengths, and as a dietitian, if you have a culinary background, that definitely will be a strong point for you and also the clients that you work with.
Thank you.
So just hanging out here. So I think that's enough lettuce. We're only gonna add a little bit. We have our cheese. Oh, avocado, that's one of my favorites. And if you don't know about varieties in avocado, this is a Hass avocado. And I currently live in Florida, and Florida has their own kind of avocado, which is very big, has a green skin, and it's typically has a little bit more water. For me, it has a little less taste, but I'm being biased. But these avocados are the ones that we're going to use. If it's your first time cutting an avocado, please don't do it in the air. I've seen so many people have mistakes around that. Find a cutting board and find a stable base and go around. Yay! And this is lovely because it's loose, so we'll be able to take that out. All right. I'm just going to let this hang out. And for some of you that don't know, I feel this is obvious, but adding some lemon juice to avocado will definitely prevent it getting brown, especially if you're having it out. Another thing about avocados, since we're kind of waiting for things to get together, is that if you find really green avocados at the grocery store and you're kind of waiting around for them to ripen, you put them together with very ripe bananas, and the bananas expel a gas that helps ripen the avocados. So in maybe like a day, even less than a day, they'll probably be ripened if you let them hang out with the bananas. So that's something to think about when you're buying avocados and they aren't ripe. I'm also going to use a little bit of cilantro on top. Ooh, sorry, I moved it. A little cilantro on top just to add some, some nice green color. And I usually keep my cilantro in a little, especially at home, I keep it like this, almost like if it were a flower vase. It looks nice on the counter, but it also stays fresh a lot longer compared to if it were just stacked in your refrigerator, hiding underneath everything. So we're gonna use a couple of sprigs of this to freshen up the dish, make it look nice. Yeah, and I think we're good to go. I'm gonna move this cutting board actually and bring the tostadas out, and we're gonna start building our dish. So I'm gonna move this. I'm gonna leave this here for you to see, and we're actually gonna build here, and I might have my niece come over and build one with us if she's up for it. But that's the whole point of cooking as well. If you have kids at home, don't be afraid of having them in the kitchen. Like I said, they'll be more likely to taste different things if they're in the kitchen with you. It might get a little bit messy, but that's part of the fun too, right? Right? Uh-huh. Yeah, you should see my niece. She gave us the thumbs up. All right, so I'm gonna get our tostadas out. Woo! Well, they got a little brown, but they'll still be good. See, this is what happens when you talk too much. This is what happens. But this one actually looks really good, and I made a couple earlier, and we'll use that one and a couple of the ones there. I'm gonna bring over my chicken. Don't want to hit my camera woman with this. All right, cool. So this is how it's meant to look. Again, having that nice lycopene, vitamin A rich broth with our chicken. And again, I chose chicken breast, but you can always use any part of the chicken to make this dish. How are we on time? Are we good? Yeah, all right, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and start building. We'll get a different plate. Turn this off. All right, good. So, should I do it over here? Can you see a little bit better if I do it over here? All right, so traditionally, again, I'm gonna have the tostada that we made. I'm gonna put some chicken on. And again, the idea is that everyone kind of makes their own. So if you want a little more chicken, a little less chicken, and as you can see, that's why we have the broth. The tortilla will absorb that delicious broth that we have. Actually, I forgot to kind of taste it, but I think we're good on salt. Good. I might actually add chipotle at the end, so that's just me. Okay, so we have tortilla-based chicken. I'm gonna add some lettuce. Then I'm gonna go in with our avocado. A little bit of our cheese. And our Mexican sour cream that I love these containers. Like, who thought of this? This is great. Let's see if it doesn't come out too fast. All right. Whew, does that look good or what? And I'm actually gonna add, because like I said, my family and I like eating spicy things. So I'm just gonna add a couple dots of that on top. All right. So I appreciate you guys again being patient, waiting till our live connection worked. This is a calorie conscious, healthy way of cooking traditional Mexican dishes. If you want to follow me on Instagram at the Culinary Jalapeno, I post a ton of recipes and healthy tips that might be useful to you and your family. I know Johnson & Wales will be hosting other cooking classes along the way. If you have any other questions, this would be the time to do so. But if we don't have any questions, we're going to go ahead and log off. Hopefully you'll be able to make this at home. And again, thank you for your patience and joining us in our live class.
Okay, David Rivoli, 18, he has a question.
Sure.
What brought you into the culinary industry?
What brought me to the culinary industry? Well, growing up in Mexico, I was surrounded by food. So whatever event or whatever birthday, I was always the little kid in the kitchen, just asking questions or hanging out with the grandmas and trying to cook. So that's what got me into cooking in the first place, wanting to learn more about that. And then I was always fascinated by food science as well, like how do flavors combine and how all of this brings people together. So that was my first step into, being interested in cooking and culinary arts. And long story short, I actually got accepted into a culinary school in Mexico, but they actually have a partnership with Johnson & Wales. And I was like, well, why not go to Johnson & Wales? They're amazing. So that's how I got connected with Johnson & Wales in North Miami.
Okay, one more question from David Rivoli, 18. What's your favorite memory of JW?
Oh, favorite memory of JW, okay. So I was a resident assistant and in the freshman dorms a long time ago. So I think my favorite memories are hosting culinary events with my residents. So whether that was like cooking competitions, or just having like knife skills in the dorms where everyone could get together and practice their knife skills. So I think those are some of my best memories, are just being with my peers and really just learning the basics with people that had the same mindset as myself at the time. Oh, seems like forever ago.
Oh, one more from Rob Stevenson, 15. What is your favorite dish?
My favorite dish, well, I'll go with the Mexican dishes because obviously I'm Mexican. I would have to say enchiladas verdes are my favorite. They're made with a green mole, with a chicken filling. Those are definitely my favorite. I would eat those every day if I could. And if you want me to make them, hey, post it in the comments. I will make them. So this is my niece Hadassah. She was in charge of the chicken today, right? High five. Ja. Okay. So again, if no one has any more questions, okay.
One more from David Ribioli, 18. Hardest thing you ever made?
Hardest thing I've ever made. I think I will have to go with the mole. If a lot of us have heard of mole in Mexican cuisine, it being a very labor-intensive sauce. We typically think of the chocolate mole that's presented to us here in the US, but there's actually so many different kinds of mole. There's red, there's yellow. So learning how to make red mole was definitely like the biggest challenge. I don't think to this day, I don't know the ingredients. I would have to look at my notebooks and look back. And it's the preparation that goes into each ingredient. So like making sure that everything is like sun-dried and that it's roasted the correct amount and it's added at the correct time into the sauce and it's braised for the correct amount of time. There's just so much love going into that dish that I would say that's the difficult part, is being patient through the process of making the mole. So yes, I think that's the most challenging thing I've ever made.
Okay, since we are almost out of time, we have two more questions.
Okay.
From David Rivioli, 18. Besides food, what is your favorite part of your Mexican culture? And from Rob Stevenson, can you make micheladas?
My favorite part of the culture, I just think that the friendliness and the family, everyone's so family oriented, and everyone's your friend in the sense that if you needed help, your neighbor is always there to help you. If you go, out to eat and all of a sudden you wanted to dance to the music that's playing, you'll find someone to dance with. Like, I think that part of the culture, that everyone is there with you and there for you and wants to build a relationship. I love that part of Mexican culture. Like, if you're ever hungry in Mexico and you just say you watched my video and people know me, like, you would be invited to eat in someone's house. Like, that's just a relationship that people want to have with you in Mexico. So I love that about not only Mexico, but other Hispanic cultures as well, that they want to be friends with you and they want to offer what they have, especially when it comes to food. Everyone will want you to eat at their house.
This is a good question. Will you do another cooking live?
Oh, I would love to. So if you definitely want me to have another live cooking video with Johnson & Wales, feel free to comment or message. But I also have live cooking classes on my own page at The Culinary Jalapeno. So if you are interested in calorie conscious or healthy tips and recipes, go over to my page, and I host cooking classes as well. So if you want to see more tips, go on that page, or with Johnson & Wales as well. Thank you, everyone. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to message me directly, or stay tuned for more Johnson & Wales cooking lives.